Before we go any further, and for any who are perhaps on the stream, I want to apologize. The timing, I realize, is probably not great. Maybe it is great. Maybe if you look at it spiritually, but I realize the disaster that happened over a week ago. And when Eddie first came to me, it was a few days before the flood. And I had been thinking about this lesson. This is a new lesson. This is not one, as Eddie thought, well, since I'm giving you short notice, you can pull one of your old ones. Well, no, I didn't. This is one I've been thinking of ever since, and I've still got the notes on the side of my Bible, where Eddie had given a lesson around Genesis 6. Actually, I've still got embracing God's divine pattern. That's what he was talking about, but when we were reading it, something caught my attention and it wouldn't let me go. And I had been working on it for some time, not just I'm going to give a lesson, because I'm not down on the list. And in fact, I've even been taken off because of some physical issues I have been having. But I knew maybe there might be a time that I would be called on. And so that's what I had decided that I was going to do. Well, that weekend that's when the flood hits. So by Sunday, I'm thinking, I don't know. This might be, because I had till the 20th. Now you're understanding, wait a minute, this isn't the 20th. This is the 13th. Well, that's because that Sunday after the flood, Eddie came to me and said, the one I had lined up for the 13th Sunday night can't be here. So I need you to move up a week if you could do that, because I know you've got lessons prepared. He didn't know I was preparing a new one, and I had already been working on it. Now, instead of thinking, well, I've got 2 weeks to get another one, instead of talking about maybe a flood, I was pretty well locked in. And anybody who might be maybe not offended but upset, perhaps you had some neighbors or friends or loved ones or family that may have been involved, or just thinking about it happened in our home. It happened in Texas. It happened on the Guadalupe River. I apologize. But maybe the closeness and the disastrous visions I have seen on my television, maybe it'll help drive the spiritual point home that much more. And I do mean it, because I have seen some things on the news, and the Fox News channel, which I'm told by some of my people in the world, especially when I worked in the world, that's going to make me a crazy man. But I do watch a lot of news. But with that in mind, go to Genesis now, the 6th chapter. And I want to read beginning in verse 14 first. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it inside and out with pitch. This is how you are to make it. The length of the ark, 300 cubits. I believe that's about 450 feet. Its breadth, 50 cubits, about 75 feet if 18 inches is a cubit. And its height, 30 cubits, which is 45 feet. Make a roof. Now, if you're reading from an older translation, or for the King James, which I had all my life, or the New King James, or the, New American Standard, which those are the three I'd read all my life, I thought it was make a window. That word is used here only once. And in the old translations, they said, it must be window. Because the word from the English Standard or Revised Version literally is light. But they put window. But in the English Standard Version, it's make a roof for the ark and finish it to a cubit above, and set the door of the ark in its side, make it with lower, second, and third decks. Now, flip on to the 8th chapter and look at verse 6. At the end of 40 days, Noah opened the window of the ark that he had made and sent forth a raven. It went to and fro until the waters were dried up from the earth. Now, that you think reads a little funny. Well, of course, Noah built the ark. Why would it single out that he built this window? I do not know. But I do know this is the window that he let the birds out. Perhaps that roof, which is also light, which was just under the top of the roof. In fact, some later translations even have skylight. Because later on you're going to read in the 8th chapter, it says that, I believe it's verse 13, Noah removed the covering of the ark and looked, and behold, was that the roof? Whatever, there was an opening apparently going all the way around. Maybe this window was just one part. Because some have suggested, well, maybe there was a lattice because when those birds tried to get out, I think if God wanted to keep the birds in, that wasn't going to be a problem. But they needed light, they needed ventilation, but now he's got a separate window. Was it one he made later? Because it's not in our original instructions. I don't know. But I know he could see out of it. And if the whole roof had a cubit long light or light window for ventilation, opening, that could have been plenty for him to see. And that word in Genesis 8, that is the Hebrew word that is normally used for window. The one in chapter 6 is not, unless you're talking about when the windows of the heavens opened and started raining. That's the Hebrew word again. Well, I said all of that to say this. Have you ever thought, and again, the visions of the flood that just happened, you ever thought, did Noah, by chance, take a look at what was going on outside? Did he see? Could you imagine what it was like if he did? They were in there 7 days before it started. The people had been warned for 100 years. And it talks like they didn't know anything. That's the way it reads in the scriptures. Those people didn't know anything until the point it started. But I don't know how close the people are to the ark. I don't know how close they lived. It does seem to make you think if you look and read certain people that maybe they wasn't too far proximity of all the population that was there at that time. I do not know. I do know that Noah had some relatives still alive. Methuselah died the year that the flood would have come before. Others in his lineage would have still been alive during 100 years he was preparing the ark, or perhaps possibly less, depending on who you read. And you could just imagine, well, they didn't know, and then all of a sudden something that they had not seen. Some think that there had only been a mist from the garden till now. Now, did God change that after the sin? But there was a mist. But they certainly had never seen something like a flood. Had they seen rain? But now the aquifers from under the ground are coming up, as well as the rain starting. They hadn't seen that, for sure. And how fast was it coming? Did they have time to come? The door is shut, and they're beating the door. So the only way Noah could understand, if he wanted to, what was going on outside was to look at the window. What would he have seen? He would have seen people and animals, who knows what else. And it was too late for them. Were they beating on the door once it started? Were they close enough for that? screaming and yelling for help when they had ignored for 100 years? I do not know. I don't know if they had time. I don't know if he chose to look. I do know that in Kerrville, or Kerrville, where Camp Mystic was, the water rose 25 feet in 2 hours. And that's not actually a regular, normal flood, but compared to what was going on in Noah's time, that's still probably pretty slow. I don't know. It's awful to think about. It was a perfect storm. And that's what's going on in people's lives right now if we choose not to look and see. If we do not see that people are drowning, then it's devastating to them. And they don't know. In Comfort, Texas, I read, whether it's true, where it raised 31 feet in one area in 90 minutes. In San Antonio, I was told that it raised 26 feet in 45 minutes. How much time did the people in Noah's time have? I don't know. It was a perfect storm. And the people in Noah's time had been warned. That's why I wanted the one passage read where he proclaimed, he heralded, he preached the truth of what was going to happen and of God for 100 years. A herald of righteousness, it says. In the old King James again, it was preacher of righteousness, but he heralded the truth. In Hebrews 11 and verse 7, it says, by faith, Noah, being warned of events as yet unseen, constructed an ark for the saving of his household. By faith, he could see the unseen. They couldn't. And they drowned. Now, they had no excuse. They couldn't see it despite 100 years of warning. Now, what's their reaction now when it starts and the aquifers come and the rain starts? I have to believe if they's close enough, they're going to the nearest ship they can find. Now, what could Noah have seen through that window? Now, his window had already been open for those as he was building. But what about now? What in the world kind of mess would he have seen if he chose to look out? Enemies, neighbors, even relatives, friends, possibly still drowning if they haven't already drowned. In this world, we are surrounded by sin everywhere. We are surrounded by those who are lost, who are drowning in sin, and some completely lose it every single day. Look at Psalms, the 69th chapter. There's a couple passages in Psalms that I want us to look at real quickly. I say quickly, that's if I can find it. Psalm 69 and verse 1. It says there, and after I read the first two verses, mark this, or keep your finger there for just a second. But there it says to the choir master, according to lilies of David, save me, O God, for the waters have come up to my neck. They've threatened my life, some translations have. I sink in deep mire where there is no foothold. I have come into deep waters and the flood sweeps over me. Now he's talking about what's going on in his fight to be with God and with enemies and with sin, just trying to completely sink him in the mud, to drown him. Keep that marked and look at the 38th chapter of Psalm and verse 4. It says there, for my iniquities have gone over my head like a heavy burden. They are too heavy for me. And if you don't get help, of course, he's expressly praying to God. But where are the people around us today if we look outside the window? Where are they going to get guidance? Where are they going to get help? Are we the light? Or have we been turned off? We sang this song, send the light. And that's, of course, that's our duty of all. We need to send the light. The church, that needs to be our work, and do whatever we can. But we need to be the light. When it comes to trying to teach, talk, invite, ask anybody. When you hear them questioning something about the Bible and about God, and we just ignore it. Because we know if we don't ignore it, we might have to pay fuller attention to them. And in the state that they're finding themselves drowning in their sin. Now, look again at the 69th chapter of Psalms. As these people are overwhelmed, consumed, and drowning in sin, look at verse 14. Of course, again, this is David pleading to God. And it says, when the Almighty... I was going to read 18. In 69, verse 14, deliver me from sinking in the mire. Let me be delivered from my enemies and from the deep waters. Let not the flood sweep over me, or the deep swallow me up, or the pit close its mouth over me. Do not let me drown and be separated from God. And if Noah looked outside any of the window possibilities he might have had, that's what he would have seen. It was too late. They were gone, but he at least preached to them for 100 years. It was their fault they were not ready. Can we say that as we sing the song, or maybe you all have in a long time, but the song I remember that we led a lot in the old country church where I come from, you never mentioned him to me. Can you imagine when the time comes and you see, perhaps you're aware of somebody who's died in their sins, maybe you're alive, and you know somebody died, and you don't say, one time he said something to me, or I had an opportunity to ask him about maybe coming to service, or he had a question, or he questioned something about God, and I just let it go, and I never mentioned it to him. Are we waiting too late to even open the window to notice all of them that are around us? And, we're not perfect either. And that's what we came out of. Thank God. Who taught you? Mother and dad? Somebody gave you a card and invited you? Somebody invited you, maybe you went to the coffee shop or restaurant. Maybe you had some of the young men that are doing such wonderful work to try to spread the gospel. As our class yesterday, I say our class, I wasn't there, I was still working on this, but that have taken that and said, that's what we're going, maybe something like that happened. Well, where's the obligation? That we might be able to do the same thing. Noah looked out his window and he saw death, and he saw death because of sin. There's drowning and death all around us every single day. And maybe our neighbor doesn't even know that we're a Christian, whatever that is. In Proverbs, the 4th chapter and verse 23, in fact, I didn't ask, and I don't have things up here, but if I was going to have 3 words, it would have been window, heart, and love. And in Proverbs, the 4th chapter and verse 23, it says, keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flows the springs of life. The New International Version says, for everything you do flows from it. The New Living Translation says, for it determines the course of your life. That's the window of your heart. That's what encompasses your mind, your will, and your emotions. It is the inner thought. The heart is our inner thought. And it is our feelings that lead to our decisions and to our actions. Is it open? Are we opening it to where we can see, I don't know if I have the time, then get them to somebody else. Give them a note and say, we will talk about this more, whatever it may be, but don't ignore them. Don't ignore the opportunity that the Lord has laid right in your hands if you just open the window. Where is our window of the heart when it comes to noticing and seeking the lost that are all around us? Preaching the lost should continually be in our prayers. That was the main scripture yesterday that I read from Nathan's email about the class yesterday about spreading the gospel and maybe things that we can learn to do, maybe even have more love just for souls and to do it. But it was the passage in Colossians 4 and verse 3. He says, pray also for us that God may open to us a door for the word to declare the mystery of Christ. But are we just praying for some others to get the open door? No, that was for Paul, and he was going out, and they were home, and they were sending him forth to preach the gospel, and it was brand new, and a lot of people hadn't heard it. And then the folks were doing their part too, that they had a chance. Acts 8, first 4 verses, it says, during the persecution they spread, the apostles were still there. But the members of the congregation was going to Judea and Samaria, and they were taking and spreading the gospel everywhere they went. That wasn't just for somebody else, but we certainly should start there. We should pray that a door, but then don't stick our foot in it. Don't close it because there's somebody else not there to preach and to teach. I prayed for you to get an open door, not me. But we're still successful. We are still converting souls in this congregation. We can't just look through the windows, see the lost, pray for them that the door will be opened to somebody else. But we feel the success. You know what we've done then? We've institutionalized the church. You know what that is? That's like when we take the money and we say, I'm going to let you, colleges, teach our preachers. I'm going to take give it to the nursing homes and to the children's homes and the orphans' homes. I'm going to let you, but we're doing the work. No, we're not. You gave them the money. They're doing it for you. That's where we have to be careful in what opportunity we might have to just get a door opened, to look through the window, to get an opportunity to bring somebody to Christ. Because we have all these classes. We have men meeting at restaurants, and they're trying to teach, and some people have been converted. And now come here or go to other congregations of the Church of Christ. And our preacher is doing such great work, and our elders, boy, we are spreading the gospel. Well, actually, no, you're a part of the congregation as an individual member. And there's members in that congregation that are being successful. But we say we are being successful. What are you doing in helping spread the gospel to somebody who might just live right next door to you, work right in the next office to you, and there's always been opportunities over. I'm not trying to become an aggravating and throwing pearls before swine and all this other stuff. I know there's times. There's times to know, and that's something like the class we had is to kind of work on that kind of stuff. But institutes said, oh, we've done so well spreading the gospel. And I've given my money on the first day of the week, and boy, am I doing good. Are we? Or are others who've really taken it seriously? Because when you go to Ephesians 4 and verses 11, 16, it talks about equipping the saints, not the church as a whole. It wants to make the church stronger with everyone doing their part. But they are doing their part. Verse 12 says to equip the saints for the work of the ministry, for building up the body of Christ until we all, not the church as a whole, all, it is talking about us individually, all attain to the unity of the faith and knowledge of the Son of God, to a full-grown man, individually. Or mature, I think manhood is what maybe the English Standard Version says. But if we are strictly got the institutional idea of us being successful in taking the gospel to a drowning world, where is the love for the lost in that kind of view? You know, we know what our memory verse is this month, or at least I better. It says, anyone who does not love does not know God, because God is love. 1 John 4 and verse 8, God's love wants to save man. 2 Peter 3 and verse 9, God is not wishing that any should perish, but all should come to repentance. That's his desire. Well, if that is our Father's desire, and I think it's very interesting, he is our Father. What love have you had much more than any love you had as a father or a mother for a child? What is the greatest showing of your life of love, more than likely? And he's called our Father. What should we be doing? Christ is the head of the church, his bride. When you fell in love, when you married and you spent your life, what kind of love? Any other love you had in this world like that? Those two things? Well, we've got the husband and we've got the father, and they love us and they love mankind. And if we don't love our fellow man, we don't know them. And we are separated from them. Matthew 5 and verse 44 and 45, it says, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. This includes wishing for our enemies their ultimate good. And what is their most important thing in this life is to save ourselves from this untoward generation. Well, that's us. If I love my enemies, if there's any opportunity, if there's any possibility, that's what I should want for him. At least to get for him to stand, to look at me at least first. Then maybe you can get that foot in the door. But you don't give it back to him because he's an enemy. You want the best for him. And you can't want the best for him if there's not some way you don't see him drowning in his sins and devastated. He's not a member of the Lord's body. If I don't take any opportunity I may be given to try and bring the lost to Christ, I don't love them as I should. I don't love as I should. And I don't know God. That's scary. That is a scary thought. That's the importance of that passage. In Mark 12 and verse 31, it says, the second is this. The first was you're going to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. But the second is, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these. Now, your neighbor is anyone you have opportunity. Do you want him out there? Would you want to have seen him? Noah tried. He tried for 100 years. Did he want to see his neighbors out there floating dead, sinking, gasping for air. If he could see that, I don't know. But is that what, spiritually, do we want that for them? Is that showing love for them if we don't take one little opportunity? Just invite them to church. They may tell you no. Give them some kind of handbill. Anything that it might be possible that you could do. Whatever door of opportunity that may come to us. In 1 John 4 and verse 20, it says, if you don't love your brother whom you have seen, you can't love God whom you have not seen. How in the world can we say, I love all these people, but I really don't care. I'm so busy. I don't care if I look through my window, and I don't care if I see them. And if I see them, I might not even get around to pray, but I will at least pray for a door being open for somebody else to teach them. That is not the love of the Father. How are we going to feel if we don't open the window or if we block the door for an opportunity that we could have had, that we could save somebody from drowning? And it is terrible. One of my greatest fears as I was little. And I got brave when I was trying to learn to swim, and I thought, I think I've learned to swim. So I'm going to the deep end. I'm going to show myself. It was a challenge to me. I'm going to show myself because I was backward as a kid. And unfortunately, I jumped right next to one of those sprayers that push the water to keep it nice and fresh. And I didn't swim that well. And that thing was powerful, and it kept pushing me, and I couldn't get, and trying to swim, and I couldn't get to the edge. And I was about to yell for the lifeguard this far from the edge of the pool. I was scared to death. I felt like I was drowning. And it finally, I got one chance to think in my head real quick, Rick, stupid. I think I called myself stupid. Move over where the spray isn't and get off. I learned to swim. But I respected the water from that because it scared me to death. As we close, I want to go to 2 Peter, the 3rd chapter. And I've got a couple passages in the epistles of Peter. In 2 Peter, the 3rd chapter, and in verse 6. Excuse me. And that by means of these, the world that then existed was deluged with water and perished. But by the same word, the heavens and earth that now exist are stored up for fire, being kept until the day of judgment and destruction of the ungodly. Drop down to verse 10. But the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. Then the heavens will pass away with a roar, and the heavenly bodies will be burned up and dissolved, and the earth and the works that are done on it will be burned up. Since all these things are thus to be dissolved, what sort of people ought you to be in lives of holiness and godliness? He started this thought by saying people that, they wasn't ready. They could have been ready. In the old times, he flooded it and run it and ended. That was his main point there about Noah, but those folks could have known. Now, perhaps we get it from trying to teach others to what about ourselves? Are you ready? The world was destroyed by a flood. And even if Noah had chose to look out that window and saw the terrible scene he might have seen, he couldn't do nothing about it. But he had tried for 100 years. Are you ready? Because now he's not going to flood the world anymore, but he's going to burn it up. And there's going to be a judgment, and those that are on the left that did not obey the gospel of Jesus Christ will be feeling something, burning. They won't be drowning, although maybe they wish they were. At least it would end. But they're burning, and they're hurting, and they're separated from God, and they're in darkness. We ought to think about that. That's going to happen to the people that we might be ignoring. But what about you today, if you're here? I want to finish with 1 Peter, the 3rd chapter. If you're here and you've never obeyed the gospel of Jesus Christ, he even uses the time of Noah and the flood waters to bring us to now. And what you really need to be thinking about if you're here tonight and wish to obey the gospel of Jesus Christ for the salvation of your soul. In 1 Peter, the 2nd chapter, or the 3rd chapter, verse 20. Because they formerly did not obey when God's patience waited in the days of Noah, while the ark was being prepared, in which a few, that is, 8 persons, were brought safely through water. Baptism, which corresponds to this, because the world was saved from sin, he wiped it all off by water. Baptism, which corresponds to this, now saves you, not a removal of dirt from the body, but as an appeal to God for a good conscience through the resurrection of Jesus Christ. The invitation is yours. If you wish to obey and to be baptized for the forgiveness of your sins, you can let it be known. If you, in any way, maybe as an erring child of God, or if there's something in your life that you would wish to discuss with the elders, some sin that is public in nature that has brought reproach to the body of Jesus Christ, any way that we can help you, will you come now while we stand and as we sing?